It's been another year, which means another Call of Duty, and this time around things get a bit weird. This is COD BLOPS 3.
Human bioaugmentation has become commonplace throughout the developed world.
The sheer scale of this disaster has overwhelmed the authorities.
Superstorms continue to hammer the region, hampering relief efforts.
Make no mistake, this is a new Cold War. We may not always see our enemies, but they are out there.
We find ourselves 50 years in the future where drones and robot soldiers fill the battlefield, and humans find themselves becoming more machine than man.
It's a pretty similar setting to last year's Advanced Warfare, isn't it? But remember how last year you lost one arm at the start of the game?
Oh, yeah.
Well, this time, you lose both arms. Dialed it up a notch, Hex.
What?
Am I dreaming?
Well, let's say you are.
There are a lot of similarities, but I think it's developed well enough into its own thing.
Why not just go with it, right?
It's also interesting how Call of Duty has become so entrenched in this future war setting. I mean, there are 3 studios working on these games now. Surely one of them could make a game that isn't set in the future.
Yeah, if you're going to have all these sub-brands for your franchise, they should feel more unique. Having said that, this is my favourite future COD yet. They play well with the setting between the tech, the Terminators, and the direct neural interface, which is basically a device implanted in your brain that gives you various superpowers and can also send you on digital trips.
All of this is a simulation inside our minds.
Oh man, I love some of those trip out sequences. There's one really long one that I think made for one of the best COD missions I've ever played. And in general, they've put a lot of effort into the story this time, haven't they?
Yeah, it's still a Call of Duty story though. It's bombastic and over the top and occasionally quite hard to follow. But it is more personal and focuses on the characters themselves, which helps pull you through all of the absurdity.
Is there a reason I'm only finding out about this tracker shit right now? You and Kane into keeping secrets from me?
Although, unlike Black Ops 2, you never make any decisions that affect the outcome of the story, so it always plays out the same, which is kind of a shame because I thought that was a really interesting direction for the series to take.
Yeah, but I think also focusing just on this one story without those branching elements means they've been able to tell a stronger story. Although there isn't much of a connection at all between this and the previous game's storylines. They're in the same universe, and they mention some characters from the older games, but that's about it.
I wouldn't thank Menendez. He was a prick who got what he deserved.
One thing I thought was great is that for the first time ever, they let you be either male or female, and then use you as an actual character in the cutscenes.
These f***ers mean business.
So do we.
I think it works so well to ditch the silent protagonist and put you in the story too. You know, usually with Call of Duty games, I feel a little bit like a camera with a gun that's just being swept through the action, but this is great. And as a bonus, I was stoked to see Katie Sackhoff, aka Starbuck from Battlestar Galactica in the game. So cool.
This is a simulation, right? Like in training.
No Kevin Spacey though, Hex.
Katie Sackhoff trumps Kevin Spacey any day. She's such a badass.
Oh, I miss Space Dog. We do have CSI Guy though.
I'm pretty sure he's from Law and Order.
Yeah, same thing.
That's not funny, man.
I appreciate the effort they've put into opening up the battlefields. There are often surprisingly big areas to fight in, giving you a lot of options in how you tackle each situation.
Yeah, and I liked all the RPG elements and character progression too. After each mission, you head back to a home base where you can spend points to upgrade your abilities and weapons.
Your abilities vary depending on which of 3 cores you choose from. The Control Core gives you abilities that focus on taking control of robots, making them fight for you, or turning soldiers' exoskeletons against them. The Chaos Core gives you powers like setting loose a swarm of nanobots, or causing robots to catch on fire, while the Martial Core gives you moves like a powerful ground smash or melee takedown.
They really mix up how you have to approach combat depending on which core you choose, and it provides nice incentive to replay missions with different styles.
There's other notable additions to the campaign as well. Firstly, there's a new realistic difficulty, where basically one shot will kill you. So that's bullshit.
Yeah, it's kind of funny though, because people have always pointed out how unrealistic COD games are, and rightly so. So this kind of feels like the developers are going, fine, you want realistic? Well, there you go, see how much fun that is.
It's a lot of effort to go to just to make that point. I'm sure there's someone out there who will enjoy that particular bit of bullshit. And it probably works better when combined with the other more enjoyable addition, 4-player online co-op. I'm so glad they've included this.
Yeah, and it's great that you can just join games that are in progress. Plus, they've done well to make sure the solo experience doesn't suffer from the kind of co-op design choices we saw in Halo 5. I mean, you can play through this solo and never feel like you need backup, but having friends along is always fun.
So this is one of the strongest COD campaigns in years, and it's also one of the longest. But in a nice surprise, there's not just one campaign, there's two.
Yeah, so once you finish the game, you actually unlock Nightmares mode.
Think back to Coalescence. The start of your journey, the beginning.
This remixes the order of the levels and completely changes the story through some new voiceover. So now, rather than fighting through a robot-filled dystopian future, it's a robot and zombie-filled future.
It does feel a little strange that they just mute all the characters in the cutscenes and the new voiceover just rewrites what's going on.
Hendrix was on edge. We were in a quarantine zone, one of many walled-off areas separating humanity from the undead.
But it's a clever way of reusing assets, and you certainly can't say that they've done it half-assed. This is a whole new campaign with zombies.
Yeah, and they've added in a lot of the mechanics from the traditional zombie mode. So your power cores and RPG mechanics are gone, and instead you find power-ups, weapon drops, and magic boxes as you play.
Also, it's interesting, they've made all the campaign missions unlocked right from the start, so you don't have to play through in sequence.
That's so strange, isn't it? And I wonder if we're going to start seeing this more and more in games. I mean, when you go to the movies, you can't start with the end of the movie and then go back to the beginning. You have to watch it, the whole thing in order.
Yeah, but like in every other sort of medium, you know, if you're reading a book or watching a movie at home, you can skip through a boring bit if you want to and just get to the part that you actually really enjoy. So there's something in that.
And the question is, why would you do that? Why would you play the end first and then the beginning? But
I think it's quite nice not to have it locked off, you know, because I'm still going to play it through from start to finish. But there may be people out there who, want to skip certain sections. They don't like the stealth bits, you know?
Let's do what we do best. Kill some bad guys.
Like the old days?
Like the old days.
We should point out, if you're picking up the last-gen version of this game on PS3 or 360, then you're not going to enjoy the campaign very much because it doesn't have one.
yeah, and that's interesting, isn't it? Because they obviously couldn't get that, current-gen polished game, on the last-gen consoles. But is it still worth doing it? Is it better than nothing?
Well, I think that this game is probably stronger on next-gen because of that. They're not trying to squeeze it onto last-gen, so that's something. And I guess, for me personally, I spend most of my time in the multiplayer for these kinds of games, so it wouldn't be too big a deal for me if I was only stuck with last-gen hardware.
Yeah, so if you're a Call of Duty fan who only plays a multiplayer, at least you can still buy the game if you've only got a last-gen console. But when it comes to this kind of thing, I always look at the price, and the last-gen copy of the game is still at around $80, where it's like $100 for the full game with the campaign and everything. That seems a bit stingy.
Yeah.
Well, then I guess it's just about choice, and the choice is there for you if you want to take it.
You still in there?
I'm still me.
The traditional zombies mode makes a return in all versions of the game, where 4 of you battle it out against waves of zombies.
Keep your distance, creeps.
There are some new progression systems, but it's still very much the same as it's always been, where you board up windows and buy new weapons as games go on. But this time, you play through a sort of Art Deco-style city that reminded me a lot of Gotham. And you can play as Jeff Goldblum, who is a magician. Give me Jeff Goldblum as a magician, and I will buy your game.
And of course, there's the multiplayer mode, which we had quite a long look at in the beta. Do you think it's held up in this final version?
I think it's held up well. The biggest addition are those new specialist classes, which each have their own special weapon and power that you can unlock. They add way more variety to the gameplay, and unlocking them gives you another thing to work towards. The maps are excellent too, and still full of those holes that I fall down all the time, but I loved wall running around everywhere.
Yeah, wall running is great. And, I'm actually kind of glad you can't do that thrusters pack dodge that you could do in Advanced Warfare. Encounters are just that little bit more predictable and fair when your enemy can't suddenly jet all over the place.
Spectre KIA.
There aren't many new modes though, with the robot escort mode being the only real addition, and it's not a particularly great one. So everyone just gravitates towards Team Deathmatch by and large. But we should wrap this up, Hex, or we're not going to have enough time to talk about Fallout for ages.
Yeah. Well, it's hard not to be impressed by just how much game there is here. And we haven't even mentioned the fully featured arcade game Dead Ops 2 that's hidden away. I'm giving this 4.
Yeah, there's just so much game here, isn't there? There's that whole Mirror's Edge free running mode, and that Horde mode. This is just such an impressive package. I'm happy to be excited about COD again. It's the best it's been in years. I'm giving it 4.5.